What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Flip Lifestyle Podcast. It is great to be back with you again this week. Super excited to help another member of our incredible Flip Lifestyle community take their online dream to the next level. And I got two members this morning on the show. We've got Tommy and Jaslynn. Tommy and Jaslynn, how you doing, y'all?
Doing good. How are you, Shane?
Now, this I believe this is your first podcast recording ever. Is that correct?
Yes,
that is correct.
Were you nervous about this morning? Like, I remember when I first started recording podcasts, the first time I ever recorded a podcast, I was going to be on this youth football coaching podcast. And this guy and I were going to talk about youth football, maybe the least important subject in the history of mankind. And I was so nervous. I was shaking. I was so nervous. And my connection dropped right in the middle of it. And I thought, that's it. I've blown my lottery ticket opportunity of the world. You'll never get it back again. Like, how are y'all feeling this morning when you're like, we're about to record a podcast?
Yeah, about the same.
I'll say she worked last night, so she was up all night thinking about it. I slept like a rock. So it's kind of.
We definitely had a few practice runs where we got on here and we were like, okay, how do we sound? Like, let's try
Does the microphone work?
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah.
Make sure all the things are plugged in. So
I think I've only, let's see. It's funny. I always tell everybody who starts a podcast, you've got to have a checklist. Like, even I have a checklist every time that I go through. And if you're watching on YouTube, I just held it up there. And I have a checklist that's pretty much the same flow every time because I read once that airplane pilots will not take off without this paper checklist. Like, they run through an entire checklist every single time, and there's two of them doing it, and they watch each other to make sure they both do the checklist. But that's why planes don't crash, is because of the checklist. And you just got to go through the checklist. I think after 1,000 podcasts, maybe twice I forgot to do something or mess something up. So it's not as bad as you think once you get going. I think one time I forgot to turn my mic on, and I listened back to it, and it was a really big guest on my other show. And I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds horrific. But you just got to go with it. You just got to go with it. All right. So tell me a little bit about y'all's background. Like, why was Jason up all night working? Tell me that. And then what do each of you do? Like, what's a little bit about your background right now?
So
story.
So she's a nurse. She works nights right now, but our background, we've known each other since we were 11 and 12 in sixth grade.
Wow.
Started dating right out of high school, and I joined the military right out of high school. We ended up getting married at 19 and 20. So pretty young doing that. And then we kind of just stayed in Virginia for a few years while I was in the military, got out. Couple other jobs. She was working at the hospital already because she knew she wanted to be a nurse. And then I was doing sales and all that fun stuff. And now I'm back in the food industry, and she's a full-time nurse. And we've been married just over 6 years. We just graduated. We just celebrated our 6-year anniversary.
Did just graduate. I'm not lying.
Nice little hump.
That's not too far from graduation.
But we just celebrated 6 years last month. And so that was really cool that we just, I don't know, we got a cool little thing going, and kind of just want to spread our knowledge.
Y'all got kids yet?
Not yet. We are taking our time, waiting to kind of just enjoy our early years and see what we can do without them first.
I had the best advice I ever got, I think, was from my brother. And he was like, 25 to get married and 30 to have kids. Now, the married thing, me and Jocelyn probably should have got married like 3 or 4 years earlier, And because we were just like putting it off. I don't know if we were both scared to death or I was just immature. One of the two, probably that. She was probably scared of how immature I was, really.
Yeah.
But then around 30 having kids, I thought, man, I'm tired now that I'm older and have younger kids. But man, it was just like you had a little breathing room in your life for a while.
For sure.
To get to know each other and to do all that stuff. And so what? So you guys what do you do in the food industry, Tommy? What do you do in the food industry?
So I'm actually helping franchise a new coffee company that we're bringing down from Arkansas. I've been with Chick-fil-A the last 2 years and just kind of branching off, doing something new though. So yeah, that's pretty much it. But
Jocelyn, did you know Jocelyn used to be in the food industry?
I did not.
When we got married, I was a football coach. I was a graduate assistant football coach. So I was in West Virginia University. We were coaching there. And she was the marketing coordinator, and she did sales for a commercial dishwasher company. Okay. And she had to travel around the country selling dishwashers to people like Applebee's and restaurants and stuff like that.
Nice.
So yeah, man, all about that.
That's
food
crazy.
Industry lifestyle. Those trade shows are pretty legit.
It's a good
Um,
time.
so what made you guys, what made you guys want to start an online business? I mean, what made you guys think about it? And then tell us a little bit about what your online business idea is all about.
Yeah, we've been talking like periodically throughout our marriage that we want to do something. Like he's always been the entrepreneur and I'm definitely like medically driven, which is why I went into nursing, but we've always like we know we wanted to do something with business, like whether that be our own business or like what he's doing with like the franchise. But we were at church a couple months ago and we had just joined a new life group, and we went to the life group and everybody in there is like between 50 to 70, and so it's like it's a cool experience because they have a lot of knowledge, but it's also like we want friends like our age
Right,
too.
right.
So they were talking about just like starting a new life group, and God put it on both of our hearts like that
Especially when we were in
day.
church that Sunday.
Yeah, we got out of church and we were like, oh my gosh, like we were just talking about it, and it was just really cool that it was like both at the same time. But we just want to do like create a community of people early married, like in their 20s or even like early 30s, just kind of navigating marriage in the 2020s in your
Yeah.
20s, because it's just
That's
like
pretty good. 2020
yeah.
in your 20s. You got about, let's
It's
say, wait a minute, what year is this? 22. You got 8 more years of that gimmick
right,
before it won't
yeah.
work anymore.
20s
Then
and 20s.
but then you'll both turn 30. So you can be like 30, marriage in your 30s in the 30s.
Yeah.
Like you can just
Yeah,
follow it with you.
exactly.
That's amazing.
But it's such a different time right now with the way the world is, and so we've been through a lot in our 6 years of marriage, and like we know what it's been like in the church and we know what it's been like not in the church, and so we have a lot to speak to on like just helping other people get through some of the hard times we've got through. So
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of people I see getting married younger these days too. Like
mhm.
I see, definitely more than when I was like in college and stuff. I'm 44, and there was a lot of people waited a lot longer then. And I feel like people like my nephew's getting married pretty soon. He's like 22. They're getting ready to get married, and I see more people getting married younger. And there is a difference. I mean, like even 20 years ago, let's say 25 years ago, when I was like 19, what was it, 98 or something, like me and Jocelyn didn't even have cell phones back then.
Yeah.
Like so how could I mean, when I was in my 20s, I was just getting, like, the iPhone wasn't even invented yet. The internet was barely a thing, like where people were like, eBay was like the biggest money maker back then. And it's like so that perspective on the world, not even to mention y'all just lived through a pandemic and all these other crazy things that are going on. I could see how the wisdom, although valuable from older generations, could be kind of like, I'm not sure that what you're saying is true anymore, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do y'all feel that way when you talk to older people a little bit?
Yeah.
Like,
A little bit, just because, like, especially just with us being younger, and then with me getting out of the military, having zero idea what I wanted to do with my life at that point. Like, we basically had to rely on our marriage to figure it out together instead of just winging it. And so, just little things like that end up being big things if you don't take care of them together. So, just little tricks here and there that we kind of learned along the way that we think are pretty valuable.
yeah, and you had to kind of navigate it by yourself,
Mhm.
Yeah, with no help.
I always feel sorry too. Yeah, no doubt. I always feel sorry for like my son's 13 and my daughter's 11, right? And we're in this weird space of like they're the first real generation that does not remember a time before technology like we have today.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's over. Like we're cyborgs. Like the sum of all human knowledge is in your hand. It all, like, knowledge is such a commodity right now. Like everyone has access to all the knowledge that's ever been. Like you can't create a
Mhm.
course, you can't create anything that's not already been said by somebody somewhere. And in that space, like my kids are growing up, and we're in this weird spot of, do we let them have, you can't not let them have access to this technology because they're going to be so behind their peers that they'll never
Right.
catch up. But then at the same time, like, we don't know what's happening to them right now.
Yeah.
And it's such a weird space to navigate. And now you guys who are just on the edge of that generation,
Mhm.
you have to not only navigate it for yourselves, but your kids at the same time in the future. And like then your friends and family and like social media. And like, gosh, it's just like, it is the people need you right now.
Yeah.
Like people in their 20s, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, they need you guys who have just went through this.
Yeah.
And I actually think in the next like probably 10 to 20 years, we're going to see something crazy happen. Information is happening so fast and things are happening so fast. Like if you're not learning from the person who's 1 or 2 chapters ahead of you and you're trying to learn from the person who's like 50 years ahead of you, it's not even going to be relevant, right? Like
Yeah.
the gap between coach and student is going to shrink because things just happen so fast. I mean, they just happen too fast for anybody to be able to keep up with it. So what you guys want to do is you want to help young married couples, maybe 18 to 25, navigate those first few years of marriage successfully. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Love it. And you guys are just getting started, right? Like literally hooked up the microphone for the first time this week.
Yeah, we
Yep.
yeah. Very fresh.
Love it. All right. Well, let's see if we can help you figure out how to avoid some of those potholes in the online business world so you guys can help people avoid the marriage potholes. So like what right now, and I just, we got to, hang out and you got to meet our team and talk to us in person at one of our live events. And we got to know that like since then, right. And you've decided to start this journey. What fears have creeped in? Like what fears about, it's one thing to say I'm going to start a small group. It's another thing to say I'm going to start a business and become an expert for young people in their 20s in marriage, right? Like
Right.
what fears have creeped up inside of you that you didn't even know you had or think you might be able to deal with?
I know like the biggest one for me is that kind of like inadequacy, because it is like, who am I at 25 to be like, hey, like I have all of this marriage advice when like we were we were literally trying to set up this microphone and we were like, no, it's this way. It's like, no, it's this way. And so we're like, we can't even set up this microphone without like having this little tiff.
Because I'm a man, I know how to do it.
I
Come
know.
on.
Without the instructions, of course. Without the
Right,
instructions.
exactly. So it's like just that inadequacy where it's like, who are we to say that like we know best? But it's also everything that has led us to this point has totally been God. Like looking back at it, we like 100% know that God has like ordained everything to get us here. So
Like even just the live events, because like we ended up going to all the live search events and y'all happened to be the last one we went to. And like each one we are like, yeah, that's kind of cool, but not really our thing. And then we get to yours and we were both like, oh my gosh, like this is it. Like we already have it. Like when you were going through everything you needed from the idea to who you're marketing to, we're sitting there like, we have that. We have that. We were like, this is 100% what we're doing. So yeah, it was crazy how God was working just throughout the last couple months to lead us to where we are now. And just some of the things that we've gone through that just even the last couple months, we figured out like, oh, that's actually a really good solution for that specific thing a few years ago. So it's just crazy how it's all falling together right now.
It's funny, this fear, some people like call it like expert enough, fear of being expert enough, inadequacy, that who am I mentality. It's like we all have that and it never goes away. Like, do you think I don't look in the mirror every time I'm about to go out on stage and say, what in the world am I doing here? Right. Like I still feel that way. Like every time, whether it's one of the live events we do, like the seminar or the stadiums or whatever it is, man, it's like, I think that's like built within us a little bit. Right. Because we know we can't do it on our own. Right. So there's always that. And then it's like, who am I to tell somebody else what to do? And you say like the microphone thing, people who want to become online experts or teach people or reach back one chapter and help others, I believe we all think we're supposed to be the perfect solution. It's always perfect. Everything's right. But that's not really like what people want. They don't want perfect. They don't want it all figured out. They don't want it true. And the problem is if someone else is having that argument and they don't have you guys and they're trying to hook up the TV or the microphone or whatever it is, they're going to get mad and go fight for a week where you guys were like, hey, we went through conflict and we got it together and we had a little tiff, but it all hooked up correctly and we're here and we're having the podcast. Love is forged in conflict and resolution. Love is through conflict. That's where love comes from. Right. And like, so you guys being able to do something like that to someone else would look like magic. Like, how did you sit down and hook up that mic together? Me and my spouse would have killed each other. Right. So like it's sorcery to other people. And we don't realize like the things that we know, if we just know a little bit more than someone else, that could be the top of the mountain for them, So I think it's not as much like what you know or who am I. It's more like what do I have to give and who needs it, right? You got to
Right.
turn it outward. It's not like who am I to do. That's like internal. I, me, who am I? Me, expert, me, who am I? Right. But when you turn it outward and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. I do know how to do this. What if I give that to someone else who doesn't know how to do it? Then it's about them,
Yeah.
right? So whenever you have those feelings, you need to like you got to look back at your avatar. You got to who is the person you want to help.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people when they start these online businesses, we get into the I want to help myself mode. I want to do this. I want to
Mm-hmm.
build that, but it's never about that, right?
Yeah.
Like I got up this morning and like today's a Flip Lifestyle recording day. So whenever it's a Flip Lifestyle day, it works a little different than my other podcast. I know I'm bringing people in to help. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
I usually will work out and then I'll sit here just with some music and just kind of chill and meditate for a minute because I have to pour into you. The show is not
Mm-hmm.
about me. It's not about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And if you'll do that in those moments of inadequacy, you'll always remember that their need is bigger than your fear,
Right.
the person you serve. And if you can kind of think back to yourself a little bit in your 20, like your young 20s when y'all first got married, and you can say, man, I didn't need that 50-year-old small group. I needed Tommy and Jaslynn. That's what I needed. And when you're like, I'm needed, they need me. And then that
Mm-hmm.
kind of helps that fear go away a little bit.
Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Can you think of like, you don't have to say their name, but can you think of someone in your life right now that you know that might be younger than you that would definitely benefit from you having an hour conversation a week with them?
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
I know I've already had like dinners with some girlfriends that they're even like our same age, but they've been married like a year, like newly married, and
Like getting out of that honeymoon phase when
yeah,
everything's all perfect and finally hitting a little bit of rough patches.
Oh
I've
yeah.
even been able to like talk to them and just kind of like redirect their mindset, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. Thank you so
Yeah.
much." And it's like a 20-minute conversation over dinner where
Think about it
even
this way.
that's like,
When you look in the mirror or you're feeling that feeling of inadequacy and you're feeling that like, who am I? That's really probably the enemy saying, who are you? To
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
take your attention off that girlfriend at dinner.
Yeah.
Right.
So as soon as you realize that, it's over. I'm not listening to that nonsense, right?
Yeah.
And it's like move past the fear. That's good. And those fears are going to come. Everybody listening to the podcast, you got to realize if we do it afraid, entrepreneurship it's basically a decision to be on a roller coaster for the rest of your life. There's going to be scary parts.
Yeah.
So you got, but the benefit is so much better than the fear that it can be cool. What about obstacles? Like you all have been, out of the, learning that you've kind of got your ball, you've ordered equipment, you've done some things like that. Like what
Mhm.
about external things holding you back? Has anything been a real challenge like externally, like obstacles in your way, things you couldn't figure out, or maybe even each other or people in your life, or like what's externally holding you back right now, especially being right at the beginning of your journey?
I would say for me, it was actually coincidental because, like, just going back to your big chart of hours, I think it's 168 hours. Like, that's something that, without realizing that we've struggled with for years, of like just how much time we've wasted behind a TV screen or
Mm,
going
A
out
lot.
to eat instead of just eating at home, and just stuff like that. And then it was funny, this morning I wake up and have a Facebook notification from 2010 where I was wise beyond my years apparently at that time, because I wrote down like you only have 24, or you have 24 hours in a day, blah blah blah. I can't remember the exact quote, but basically like make sure you're utilizing your time correctly. And like just
wow.
seeing that 20 minutes before we get on this podcast, I'm like, all right, God's telling me something. Like we need to kind of get our time back together. Yeah, so that personally, that's probably my biggest thing, is just making sure I'm utilizing my time correctly. And I definitely am progressing in that, but just breaking old habits
Yeah.
for sure.
You guys work on different shifts too, it sounds like.
Mhm.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's got to be a challenge time wise, trying to figure
Yeah, we
out how
kind
to
of just high five on the way in and high five on the way out,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that, man. Jocelyn and I traveled a lot, so we didn't work. It wasn't that we worked shifts. We just worked every minute of our waking life,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because she would have to travel. She would have to go to like Germany and stuff to sell
Oh, wow.
dishwashers. And then like I was a football coach, so I was at the office from 7 to 11, 7 days a week,
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I totally like remember that. How have you guys compensated? Like, what are some things you've done to help take back your time to make time for the other things?
I feel like we have such a unique marriage because like our whole marriage has been like crazy time schedules because he was in the military, so he was on nights
I was
when we
either on
first got
nights or across
married.
the world on deployment.
Yeah, or he was deployed, and then like when we moved back to Texas, I was in nursing school, so I was like if I was home, I was in my office studying for 12 hours a day. And then if I wasn't there, then I was at work, and then he was at work. So I mean, we just try to take the moments that we can, but we also, like he said, spend a lot of time behind our TV screen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the hardest part is just because of the short amount of time that we do see each other. Just trying to switch the mindset because like just setting up the podcast and stuff like we had a little tip about the microphone, but like it was fun doing that
Yeah.
together. Like
Yeah.
we're trying to get more active, like taking the dogs for walks, like just taking an hour or two of the day doing something other than looking at the TV screen. And so I think just doing that will obviously over time.
Are y'all
turn
going to
into-
podcast together?
Yes.
Mhm.
All right. So
We bought two mics. We couldn't set both up. We got one up, and we were just like, you know what? We're gonna stick with that for now.
one. So we were like, one's good enough.
We need to get that little splitter you were talking about that one time.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, the two. Yeah, you got to have the Y splitter, baby.
Yeah.
You got to get the Y splitter, or you got to get a Scarlett 2i2. That's what you need. A Scarlett 2i2.
Okay.
That's how you took out
Yeah.
two microphones. In the community, there is a podcast video that tells you all my equipment. So
Mhm.
want to go look at the things that we use. And my whole rig's like $300. I don't pay a lot of money for microphone equipment. There's a couple tips here for time, especially with you guys. For couples out there who might be working together, or maybe you have a business partner. Found time is really important. What time are you doing something else that you're wasting? That's especially good for learning. Like listening to an audiobook at the gym instead of music, or in your car on your commutes, like making sure you're using that time effectively. I would highly suggest for you guys that you get the app Voxer if you don't have it already. Voxer for everybody out there. That's an asynchronous communication tool for everybody that's listening. Jocelyn and I have most of our conversations when we're not together. And we do it through Voxer because we don't even always have time to call each other. Like if I'm like right now, Jocelyn's got an appointment. I got two kids here. One of them's exhausted because we got the cheerleading world championships at Disney next week. So she's practicing 4 hours a night. So I let her stay home from school today. And then Isaac's got a doctor appointment, so I got to get him there. So me and Jocelyn like look at the calendar, and we're not going to see each other today. Like we don't even have time to call each other. Yeah. But with Voxer or other apps like it, Signal's a good app too. Like it has encryption. You can I can have a full conversation. Like I can talk to her and say, "Hey, what time are you going to the doctor?" And then whenever she gets the chance to hear it, she's coming out of the nail salon going, "Hey, 3:00. I'll see you there." We meet there. We talk for a minute. We leave. She takes Anna. I take Isaac. She hits me up saying, "Hey, we're going to go to the restaurant for dinner, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll be there at 5." And it's just this running conversation, but it threads it together in its voice. So you get the feel of that conversation. So for especially coordinating, like you guys got to use that time effectively for either learning or talking to each other. Yeah. Now for recording and stuff, here's what's cool. I know people who have business partners and or they can't find an appointment time with their guests. They use tools like Signal and Voxer to record their podcast.
Okay.
So they will, because you can actually download every single one of those as an MP3 and edit them together.
Wow. Nice.
So like, even if you can't, like, let's say you're having really a big struggle with work schedules this week and you want to record a podcast and you can't do it. Cool. Like, figure out, just outline it. One of you outline it and someone else, like both of you agree to follow the outline, right? Like ask some questions, have your format, and then both of you just go back and forth on your thoughts, right? And like it'll take you a month to kind of do it a couple times to do it and make it like, because you'll get like these tricks to like know when to know how to flow everything together, right? So it'll sound like it's not, eventually it won't even, people will never know you weren't in the same place. They'll never understand whatsoever. Awesome. So that's a cool tip too. Like, I mean, you could literally podcast on your commutes if you wanted to and be like, "Hey, we're going to talk about going on vacation together. That's going to be the topic this week." And then you're like, well, I remember this time that I did this and you did this and you did that. And then like you listen to it and then you're like, oh my gosh, that was so funny. And after that, we went to dinner and did this and like, oh yeah, I remember that. And like you go back and forth and then you just download them all and edit them together and nobody ever knows the difference. And you can do little tricks too. Like you can download little musical transitions. You ever heard that on a podcast where it's like, dun, 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 like it'll just make a little chime or a noise. And that's a great way to do it where if you guys can't be in the same place at the same time to make that happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. We'll definitely look into that for sure.
Do you guys meet every week about your schedules?
Ish. I mean, we talk about it, but
we know
not
when
like...
each other works, but we don't actually sit down and figure out time.
That you need to print that 168 grid, man. I'm telling you. Me and Jocelyn meet a couple times a week. And we don't do it perfectly by any stretch of the imagination, right? Sometimes it's an impromptu meeting, but I think we all know as married people how those go sometimes. And but like we do one standing appointment we have every Wednesday for 3 hours is a money talk, because we're in business together, right? And that's kind of our planning time. It's from 9 to 12 on Wednesday mornings. You know, as you go into business, especially together, you got to take on roles and have clear expectations. There will be more money coming in eventually from memberships and members and people like coaching and all that stuff. Staying on the same page with that, what we're spending it on in the business. But also most of that meeting is a lot of time stuff, like what's happening between now and next Wednesday, just to make sure we're efficient. It's one thing to say, I'm not going to watch TV. I'm not going to do this, but man, you got to be on the same page. You got to know what you're doing. If you don't have meetings, you're not going to be on the same page. Right.
Yeah.
So do you work shift work like Jason, where it's like you work like a week a lot and then you're like a week off or whatever?
I do I just do 3 shifts a week. So I try to do them
more consistent.
back to back. Yeah. So I try to do like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday or something like that every week. So I can keep it consistent. Because I also don't like flipping my schedule back and forth.
Yeah.
So if I can keep it consistent, then I can know like what days I can be on days. For like my personal life. So
what about you, Tommy?
So right now, I'm still in between. The coffee shop hasn't opened yet, so I'm pretty free, just doing odd jobs here and there. So that's what I'm saying. Like right now, I'm trying to take advantage of the time I do have since I'm not working full time. That's my struggle right now.
I tell you right now with the time thing, man, meetings are everything. It's the only thing that will ever solve that problem, you know. And there's a great quote. I don't even know if this is a true thing. It might be a legend, but somebody asked Abraham Lincoln if he had 4 hours to chop down a tree, how would he do it? And he said, I'd spend the first 3 hours sharpening the axe. And that's actually what most of us in our life give up, is that time to plan and get on the same page. And I don't think anybody should ever try to take back their whole calendar, because that's not how life works. But y'all got to take back 3 hours to plan your business only, and not talk about family or friends or like, you got to find 3 hours where you're both off. That will fix everything. Don't fix the 168. Sharpen the axe, right? And so find 2 to 3 hours on that one and just commit to it. Like, this is it. We only talk about business here. We don't talk about the gutter falling off. We don't talk about the yard getting mowed. Like this is like, we sit here in silence for 10 minutes and then we put on our COO and CEO hats and go. And I promise you that comes from 10 years of experience.
Yeah.
Right.
Since we are so new too, we're trying to we don't even know fully what to discuss yet, because we're just kind of
because right now we're still just trying to grind out ideas for the modules and basically not overproduce too much content, but get like a really solid foundation to where when we do launch, people.
So I'm gonna give you a framework. Okay, you might want to write this down. I'm going to give you a framework of how to conduct a meeting when you actually shouldn't know what to discuss going into a meeting. I don't think that's really true. So here's how a meeting functions. Just write down A, B, C, D, E. And for anybody listening, even if you don't have a team or you don't have a partner or you don't have a spouse that's working with you, you can totally meet with yourself. And if you follow this framework, you can figure out what you really need to work on. Okay. All right. So A stands for agenda. A stands for agenda. The first thing you got to do is figure out what you got to talk about, right? So it's like that question of, what should we be talking about? What should we work on this week? Like, what are all the things that we could do? So it's just like, you take a few minutes to just dump it all on paper. Greatness flows through your lips and your fingertips, right? So you got to write it down. Like, what are all the things we could work on? And then it's like, well, you'll start seeing when you do this every week, well, we can't do that thing until this thing gets done. And we can't do this one until this thing gets done. And all of a sudden, the thing that should go next emerges from setting the agenda at the meeting, right? Like we had a meeting last 2 days, my team, I brought them into my hometown and we've been meeting to plan. We do this program called the 12-week year. It's a great book by Brian Moran. And so we meet for, once every 3 months, and then we do a 3-month plan for 12 weeks. But we don't know what's going to be on that agenda every time because it opens and closes in 12 weeks, right? So we spend a lot of the day like, what should we do? What should we work on? What's the agenda for the next 12 weeks? Okay. All right. Once you see the things that emerge, you all kind of talk about them. If you disagree with them, that's okay. Conflict is good. There's two of you work on two things. Two things could emerge. Cool. Right. The next one is B is for battle plans. Okay. So this is like well, if that's the thing that's on number one on the agenda, how do we do it? Like, what does it look like? Like what, maybe you're meeting on a Sunday afternoon, you found your 2-hour window, only talk about business during that 2 hours. What's the agenda this week? Well, we got the microphone hooked up last week because that guy from Kentucky made us talk to him. So we've got the microphone hooked up, right? Maybe we should record our first course. Or maybe it's one of you says, well, what about our first podcast? And then you're like, okay, cool. Well, let's look at the calendar and make a battle plan and see how much time we have to actually do those things. You may look at it and go, wow, we could record the first course and the first podcast this week. See what's happening? Like these things are starting to emerge. So then we battle plan it out. Like, okay, cool. We're going to record the podcast. We're going to record the thing. We're going to decide on it. All right. All right. The next thing is calls to action and calendar. Nothing gets done unless it ends up on a calendar. To-do lists are dumb. To-do lists are basically rough drafts of your calendar. That's what they are.
And anytime I ask her when she has to work, she screenshots her calendar on her phone, just sends it to me.
Exactly. You should both share a Google calendar. Me and Josh, listen, my whole team has access to my calendar because everyone has to know what everyone's doing, even on their personal life on my team. I'm not trying to pry in anybody's business, but like if there's things going on, we need to know about it, right? Like, especially my calendar, right? Me and Jaslynn share a calendar. My Isaac has a calendar that has me and Joslynn's schedule, my kids, so they can see what we're doing at a glance. All right. So calls to action on the calendar. That's what C stands for. And you decide, like you completely both commit to going there. There's a great book, a great author named Patrick Lencioni. He talks about teams, and he talks about having commitment, not consensus. And I think in marriage, we all know what this means. Like we don't have to agree on it, but we now know that this has to be done, and we can commit to getting it done on these dates.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the next thing we do, A, B, C, D, is delegate. Who does what? Who does what? So you delegate, like, okay, well, I'm going to be coming home from work at 9 a.m. So it's your job to get the podcast space ready and have me a coffee ready to go for the event. And then I'm going to sit down and we're going to talk, and we have a script that we're already outlined, right? So I'll make the outline during my lunch break at the nursing thing, right? So I'll do the so it's delegating who does what to make sure the thing on the calendar gets done, because that's our battle plan based on our agenda. We're working there.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, and then E is engage. We have to do the thing, right? You can plan it, you can battle plan it, you can put it on the calendar, you can delegate it, but you got to execute, you got to engage, right? And that's going to require teamwork. So A, B, C, D, E, that's how that's how I conduct all my meetings. I usually go into the meetings not knowing exactly what's going to happen. Like we know what's going to happen in the next 12 weeks. We know the calendar, we've got everything calendared. But each week we'll check in and we'll follow up with it, right?
Yeah.
So good solid meeting. A, B, C, D, E. Everything's getting done. That's it.
Nice and simple.
Yeah,
nice
I like
simple,
that.
man. Yeah, I'm from Kentucky, man. I got to keep things pretty simple. All right, cool. So what about the actual online business now? Like I mean, you're starting to think about this. I hear you. Maybe it's like, what do we work on next? What do we have to look? What about the actual business stuff? Like, where's all that at right now? Question mark.
It's like, question mark for us.
Really just trying to figure out like how to set up everything, because I know we're gonna have help with like the website and everything like that, but really just what information we're needed to give for things like that. So that's kind of like we're
where
trying
do
to
you even
figure
start
out
kind of question. Like where
exactly,
do you
like what content needs to be there, like just first time doing anything like this. So we are very, very fresh.
Here's what you got to remember. Everyone that ever sees your thing, everyone that ever buys your product, everyone that comes to you for an answer to their solution has nothing. They
Yeah.
have nothing, or they wouldn't be looking for a solution.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
there's literally anything you create is something at this point,
Yeah.
right? So it's almost like you can't mess it up, because
Okay.
no matter what you create, you're going to gift to somebody as a customer, your customer, and it's going to be the only thing they have. So it may be not the thing they want. They don't know, but like until they use it. But like if you don't give it to them, they won't know. So there's no
Mhm.
pressure on creating the wrong thing. That's what I want to just stress as we kind of figure out
Okay.
what we do next. Every gift the world with your stuff and see if they receive it. That's all you can do right now. Now there still has to be things done in order. We are a linear species. We're living in linear time. So you got to do something, right? And I usually really recommend that people create product first and not worry about anything else.
Mhm.
You know, spouses who work together, we sometimes give a little leeway because you can kind of divide and conquer. You know,
Mhm.
like I can do a podcast while like Jocelyn's making a course right now for freelancers. We're starting to help freelancer people with their God-given skills, talents, and abilities who don't want to own a business. They might want to go freelance and just work for somebody
Mhm.
else, but work online at home, right?
Okay.
So we're delegating right now. I'm a podcaster with you.
Mhm.
Jocelyn is working on this course, right? So we're doing two different things right now. That's so you can kind of cheat a little bit, but at the same time, I don't want to give you permission to do that because it's better if you'll just go all in together and figure out
Mhm.
how
Yeah.
you can help each other go faster, you know?
Right.
But I would work on your modules first. I would figure out what you need to record as
Mhm.
like what are the if like at that dinner with your girlfriend, Jason, like
Mhm.
what's the first thing you tell her? That's your first course,
Mhm.
right? Like that's the first thing. Like if you guys were sitting down with a couple who had only been married for a year and they were starting to have conflict, Tommy, like, all right, well, guys, if you'll just step back and do this, this will probably at least alleviate some of the pressure, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then what's the stories that you can tell to get that point across?
Yeah.
What you don't want to do is do moral teaching. That's not what you're trying
Yeah.
to build. Your whole business is a story of an event that caused this common problem, the aftermath, three things we learned. Okay.
Okay.
So like that's what you got to like dig into in your courses is like how can you make those things? How can you tell those stories? How can you explain those lessons?
Mhm.
And if you, I've got a storytelling framework inside the Flip Lifestyle Blueprint too. You can go in there and look at it. Like your courses are basically stories. That's what they are,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
And like, and that's your private content. Like, how are you going to, what are people going to watch the day they join? That's
Mhm.
usually the best place, easiest place to start. Like,
Okay.
what are the five things that you would tell me? All right. So let's say I come to my nephew, he's about to get married. He's 23 years old. He don't know nothing about nothing. Right. Okay. And him and his wife come to you, like we're sitting down and you're like going to give them some advice to get them off to the first year of their life, like the first year together. Like what are like five kind of funny things you might, or three, let's go three. Let's make it even easier. What are three things you would tell them based on something that happened to you guys?
I think like one thing that we've learned more recently is just learning like I mean we've been really good communicators, but I think we've done a lot of misinterpreting the
Mhm.
communication. Like we talk a lot, but I feel like a
We
lot of
don't hear
times
each
don't.
other.
Yeah,
Like
like
we hear it the way we want to hear it instead of
right.
how they're actually portraying it. And so, yeah, I mean, everyone's always going to tell you communication is the number one key to a
Mhm.
happy marriage, which in a sense is true, but they don't give you all the subcategories that go into that. And that's the kind of
Yeah.
stuff that we want to dive
That's
into.
actually a lie because yelling at people is communicating.
Right? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's not
You know
all
what I'm
perfect,
saying? I'm
but
saying,
Yeah.
unless you're
you know what
yelling, I
the key,
love you.
I think what the key to a happy marriage is expectations.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If I know
Yeah.
your expectations, when we start communicating, it's going to be a lot more civil.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what we're talking about here, right? And we know that because you and I, we've all been married. Like we both get this. We're both shaking our heads like, yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep. We're like, we do communicate, but it's with throwing vases at each other. No, that's not right. That's the wrong kind of communication. How to communicate effectively as a young married
Mhm.
couple. That's it. That's your first
Mhm.
course. All right. Man, that's a great piece of advice, guys. I'm so glad my Uncle Shane told me to come talk to you all. This is good. Like, what else can you tell me? What else would you tell me?
I would say finances is a big one too, because there's definitely like this full disclosure, I'm the spender. No surprise there. But like in my mind, you know, I'm not like this anymore, but I definitely used to be like, if we had the money, I'm like, I want to get something. And it was usually something like I wanted to treat her with something, but I'd go spend $500 on something. And she's like, what the heck are you doing? Like, why are you like, that's something you need to talk to me about. And so that's something I've had to learn, because in my mind, I'm doing it for a good reason. I'm trying to make her happy and everything, but that's not her love language. Like, she doesn't want me to just keep giving her things. And so, and then that would bring me to my last point, which would be love languages.
Yeah.
That's a massive thing to know about your spouse, because if you don't know that, you can literally just cripple your marriage.
Yeah, are we talking like the book, like the 4 languages? We're talking about that kind of stuff. Yeah, five. I bet. I haven't read that book in a while. The 5 love languages. Yeah, love languages.
Yeah,
and love languages as a topic, even because it digs deeper. You know.
Yeah, because like we knew each other's love languages very early on, but we still, when you fall into those little tiffs and things, like you start to use those against your spouse, because you know, like hers is definitely words of affirmation, and mine is, or words of affirmation, quality time's kind of your 2 biggest things, and then mine's physical touch, and then somewhat words of affirmation. But we know what cuts deep, whether you're trying to be malicious or not. Like, you know, just tiny little things can cut deep to that person. And so
what to withhold, that's the weapon when love languages are used as a weapon kind of deal.
Yeah.
Guys, you just told me your first 3 courses. What are you waiting for?
All right, well, we'll see you later, Shane.
You know exactly what to do next. You know, yeah. So good chat.
Yeah. Bye.
Yeah, it's not that you don't know what to do. You just literally, like, everyone here is like, I can't wait to listen to their podcast, because these people clearly have something to say about communication, finances, and love languages, right? And their perspective is unique because they're 25 and 20. They're young, right? It's like this is going to be valuable to hear this, not from 50-year-old doctor whoever who wrote the book, right? It's like, you know, so like, you know what to do, but it's the fear you're going to do the wrong thing is what's really happening here. And guess what, guys? You can't do the wrong thing. It's like anything you make and it never existed, right? And if you just follow the blueprint, like product is the 3rd thing after ideas and goals. Okay. So make these things. Like, what's the great story? Like, when you talk about communication, it's not about talking about communication skills. It's talking about a time where communication broke down and it was a disaster, and what you learned from it. That's what people need, because you're trying to tell them about the disaster before it happens to them. Finances. Oh my gosh, I spent $500 on our first Valentine's Day gift. And then she looked at me and said, I didn't get you nothing because I don't like Valentine's Day. And I'm like, oh, why did I do $500? Like, that's the story that you tell, you know? And then like the love languages thing, like it's like your version of that, like talking about that, like recommending the book, talking about how, you know, the concept, I think the concept is more valuable than the actual love language book, because I think the love language thing goes a little deeper than just these 4 big giant categories, but it's like that concept of like, what do you know cuts deep? What do you know lifts up, right? Like those, you know what to do. So you just have to make the thing, and then you go like after that. So that's good. All right. So we all know that you're going to make courses now. That's awesome. What else in the online business space or thing is like giving you pause? Right? Let's say you made your courses and you got them printed. Like, what else is confusing you guys?
So obviously, like, we have the content, we have the ideas. It's more so we know our audience. How do we reach that specific audience? Like, how do we market correctly to let people know in the age group that we're looking for, like, hey, this is specifically for you? Like, what are those words that, like, basically keywords that would kind of draw people in? So just attention grabbers, I guess, is the question.
You know, I mean, honestly, the best way to do this, like when you start doing a podcast, is really work hard on your titles and like make sure that you're rubbing salt in wounds. I mean, people react to pain points in marketing. That's the most important part of marketing. Is it's not just like, you got to show results and you got to talk about benefits, but really you start the conversation with, your head hurts. I know what medicine you should take. So when you're thinking about these things, like let's take, for example, like say you're going to do a podcast about communication. So, you know, think about cliches like this, like, hey, how to keep from sleeping on the couch for a week. Right? Like stuff like that we kind of make as like funny, but that's like a real salt in the wound for some people. That's such a real thing. When Jocelyn and I got married, one of the things that we talked about before we got married, we agreed that no matter how bad we fought or how mad we got, that everyone owns the bed. So we may sleep facing different directions and as far to the
Mhm.
edges as we can get sometimes. But everyone owns the bed. You are not allowed to kick someone out of the bedroom. That is against the rules of
Yeah.
our marriage, right? So
That's
stuff
good.
like that, like the pain points in marriage, like how to communicate without getting screamed at or yelling or
Mhm.
whatever. Those are usually the things that you have to look at. Like, what are the pain points? Like, you
Okay.
can talk about how to do things, like how to plan a vacation without getting into a fight, right? How to decide when you're going to have children when one person wants to wait and one person is ready to go.
We know that
Yeah, I was
answer.
gonna say we're kind of
Exactly. I
in
know.
that
I
right
was
now.
ready for the eyebrows to raise on
So.
that one, Um, so that's what I would say is more than anything else, like is focus on the problem, pour
Mhm.
salt in the
Mhm.
wound, and then solve the problem for the people, right? Like promise the solution. Like so there's a very famous formula for marketing called problem, agitate, solve, right? Or problem, agitate, solution. You got to point out the problem, and then you rub the problem in, and then you say, I have a solution. Come listen to my podcast. Come do my thing. Come get on my email list. Come buy my product. Because that's where people are. They've got to be aware of their problem, then they got to rub it in. Like it's almost like, here's the problem. Here's what's happening in your life because of the problem. And then I have the solution. I have a solution, right? For that, if you want to come hear it. So as you're thinking about even the titles for your courses, think about that. Like, what is the problem? How do I pour what salt in the wound? How do I go? Like you all were shaking your head, right? Okay, so about the baby thing. Okay,
Mhm.
Yeah.
like when to have a baby, right? You never know when to have a baby, but it's sometimes God intervenes, right? It's like you're having one whether you like it or not. But like problem, agitate, solve. Okay, we disagree. All right, what happens when a couple disagrees when they want to have a kid? Agitate. And this disagreement causes conflict in other areas of their life.
Mhm.
Ooh, now it really hurts. Well, here's
Mhm.
the solution to that. And it's like, you may not have the solution for that yet, but that would be once you guys work through this, you'll have the solution for that. Like you'll have a way that you solve the issue. So
Yeah.
anything can go like that. Anything like finances. One person loves to spend, the other person loves to save, right?
Mhm.
How do you compromise there? What the problem is this, the agitation is this, my wife is always mad because I keep buying her $500 gifts, right? And then she's mad at me about other things. Here's the compromise solution we have come up with. Problem, agitate, solve. That's the basics of all great
Mhm.
marketing. What a great conversation we've had today. I'm so glad to reconnect with you guys and be able to help you guys, figure out your next steps. You guys are an awesome couple. Your energy when we met was incredible. You've got an awesome mission and purpose, man, already baked in to your business. Now it's just figuring out the easy stuff. It's follow the instructions. Like just get in the blueprint, get with your coaches, and just take one step at a time. And who
Mhm.
knows, you guys may be at the forefront of a generation of young marriages that buck the trend and make sure they stay together for a long, long time. So, hey
Yeah.
guys, I know it was nerve wracking coming on the show and talking about this stuff, but man, what a valuable conversation for everybody that listens to the Flip Lifestyle podcast. So, thank you guys so much for being on the show today.
Thanks,
Thank
Shane.
you.
All right, guys, that is all the time we have for this week. Before I go, I want to share a Bible verse with you. Jocelyn and I get a lot of our inspiration and motivation from the Bible. There is so much in there about business and life. And Tommy and Jaslynn inspired me to kind of start reading my Bible a little bit about communication today. And I found this Bible verse in Colossians 4:6. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. That's really what we do in our online businesses is we're creating courses or we're coaching or we're leading membership communities. Heck, even if we're out there serving people in the freelance world, it's all about serving people. It's all about answering questions so that they can take their next steps. And I hope that this conversation today, I hope the answers that I gave to Tommy and Jaslyn's questions helped you take your next steps in your online business. Because we believe that you have God-given skills, talents, abilities, and gifts that you can use to make money online. All you've got to do is ask questions. All you got to do is hear the answers. All you got to do is take action on what you hear, and you will be on your journey as well. My journey this week is coming to an end, though, y'all. Thank you so much for listening to the Flip Lifestyle podcast. I hope it served you and your family. Until next time, get out there, take action, and do whatever it takes to flip your life. We'll see you then. Y'all ready to have fun?
Let's do it.
I'm about to go into podcaster voice, so if you see a dramatic shift in my face and voice, don't be afraid.